Think about this. You've stayed in a lot of hotels. Cheap ones, expensive ones, that one with the ice machine that sounded like it was dying at 3 a.m., right outside your door. Different cities, different price tags, different star ratings. A budget chain off the highway has almost nothing in common with a resort with a rooftop pool. But one thing was always the same. Every time, in every single room, why are hotel beds always white? Not beige, not gray. Not that navy blue you picked for your own bed at home because, let's be honest, it hides stains better. White. Every time. In hotels on opposite sides of the planet that have never heard of each other. That's not a coincidence. That's a decision. Made independently, over and over again, by an entire global industry. You're probably thinking, easy. White looks clean. Looks rich. 5-star energy. That's the obvious answer, and it's the one almost everyone gives without thinking twice. Hotels want to feel expensive, and white feels expensive. Case closed. Except that explanation falls apart almost immediately. A $40 roadside motel with a flickering sign and a broken vending machine makes the exact same choice as a 5-star resort. That motel is not trying to sell you luxury. It's trying to survive on razor-thin margins. So why is it spending money on the same white sheets as a place charging 10 times as much a night? And if this is really just about looking expensive, why not black? Black hotel bedding would look just as premium, arguably more so. Moody, high-end, straight out of an interior design magazine. Hotels obsess over aesthetics in every other part of the room, the lighting, the artwork, the furniture, so why has almost none of them ever gone black on the one surface guests actually touch and sleep in? And here's the part that makes even less sense the more you think about it. White stains easier than almost any color there is. It shows every mark instantly. Needs more washing, more bleach, more replacing than a darker fabric ever would. From a pure cost and labor standpoint, white should be the color hotels avoid, not the one they all standardized on. So, was it always this way? Or did something happen at some specific point that made an entire global industry switch at roughly the same time? To find out, we have to go back before white sheets were the unspoken standard everyone assumes has always existed. For a long stretch of hotel history, patterned linens were the norm. Florals, pastels, textured weaves, anything that read as homey, rather than clinical. And patterns were extremely good at exactly one thing: hiding stains, not revealing them, which sounds convenient until you think about what it actually meant in practice. Housekeeping staff were inspecting hundreds of sheets a day, room after room, under rushed hallway lighting, trying to spot marks buried inside busy patterns. It's a nearly impossible task to do perfectly at scale. Sometimes staff missed one. And when a guest is the one who finds it instead, that's not a small inconvenience. That's a story they tell everyone they know. So hotel beds were not always white. For years, hiding a flaw was actually the industry's whole strategy. Then, something forced a change nobody was planning for. As the story goes, a hotel already dealing with a wave of guest complaints ran into a linen shortage and had no choice but to fall back on plain white sheets, just to keep rooms stocked while waiting on new inventory. Within weeks, housekeeping noticed something they hadn't expected. Dirty sheets were suddenly obvious in 2 seconds instead of requiring a slow, careful inspection. No more squinting under bad lighting, no more marks quietly hiding inside a busy pattern. A supply shortage forced an accident, and that accident solved a problem the industry hadn't managed to fix on purpose in years of trying. Word spread fast between hotel operators, and other properties began copying the switch, not because it looked nicer on a brochure, but because it visibly worked on the ground, every single day in every single room. That's Mystery 4 and 5 answered in the same breath. It wasn't one visionary designer who started this, it was a shortage. And it spread because it solved a real operational headache, not because of a trend. The first real reason white took over the industry is the simplest one. It doesn't hide anything. Any stain, any mark, any bit of wear shows up instantly under any lighting at any time of day. A dirty sheet gets caught in a glance instead of guessed at during a rushed inspection. For an industry built almost entirely on convincing a total stranger to trust a bed they've never seen before, that's not a minor detail. That is, in a very real sense, the whole business model. And this is also why budget hotels never skip this, even while cutting corners everywhere else: the coffee, the toiletries, the thread count. White sheets aren't a luxury upgrade they're paying for. They're a cheap insurance policy against the one complaint that can sink a property's reputation overnight. But catching a stain is only half of the equation. Hotels still have to actually remove it, over and over every single day at a scale most people never think about. White fabric can be bleached at full strength on every wash cycle, with zero risk of fading a color or ruining a pattern. Colored and patterned linens simply can't survive that kind of punishment wash after wash. White could be sanitized far more aggressively than almost anything else in the room, which meant hotels could actually keep pace with hundreds of check-ins and check-outs a day without their linens degrading into a mismatched, faded mess within a few months. Here's where things get genuinely interesting, and it's the part most guests never consciously notice. Guests weren't really reacting to actual cleanliness, they were reacting to psychology, to a mental shortcut that had nothing to do with hotels originally. White had already become a cultural signal for sterile and safe long before hotels leaned into it. Hospitals, lab coats, doctors' offices, even food packaging for anything marketed as pure or fresh. Hotels didn't invent that association. They simply borrowed one that already existed inside every guest's head, and it worked the instant someone walked into the room without a single word of explanation needed. That's also the answer to why this trick still works on us today, decades later, even though most people have never once thought about why. The association runs so deep, it doesn't register as a choice anymore. It just feels like how hotels are. And underneath the psychology, there's a far more boring reason holding the whole thing together: money. Identical white linens can be bought in bulk from essentially any supplier, in any year, and they will always match. No expensive redesigns when a color trend shifts. No mismatched batches sitting next to each other on a bed looking like a mistake instead of a choice. One universal standard, replaceable from any source, forever. Which is exactly why black never stood a chance, even though it looked just as premium in theory. It looked expensive right up until the first laundry cycle, when every wash faded it a little more, every stain went invisible until a guest found it first, and every slightly mismatched batch looked like a design failure instead of a design decision. White was cheaper to source, cheaper to run, and impossible to fake clean. Black lost before it ever really got a fair shot. So what if hotels had never made the switch and patterned linens had simply stayed the industry norm? Every stain debate would still be a guessing game decided under bad hallway lighting. Inspections would take longer and mistakes would slip through more often. And in a world where every guest now has a phone and a review app in their pocket, you'd almost certainly see a lot more posts with the exact words, "Found something weird on the sheets." The industry got lucky that a shortage forced the boring option on them decades ago, because the boring option turned out to be the smart one, and it's still paying off today. Remember that hotel room from the very beginning? The one you've stayed in 100 times without ever really looking at the bed? It was never about looking rich. White was never the fancy choice. It was the honest one, the only color in the entire room that couldn't hide anything from you even if it tried. And somewhere along the way, an entire industry quietly started calling honest luxurious. So next time you check into a hotel room and that bright white bed is staring back at you, it's not there to impress you, it's there so nothing can hide. You've seen it every day. Now you know why.